Well, a good Friday morning, and thank you for tuning in to the Gardener's Corner program, a Friday feature here on TV Channel 10, located on Charter Communications, Channel 191, and also on WKRX 96.7 FM. My name is Rob Hall. We're glad to have you tuned in on this pre-recorded edition of the Gardener's Corner program. We're brought to you today by Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip, South Boston Memorials, and T.G. Brooks Company, in business in Timberlake since 1936. Without further ado, I would like to make welcome, and I'm really excited to have the Commissioner of Agriculture for the state of North Carolina, Mr. Steve Troxler. Mr. Troxler, welcome to Radio Roxborough.
Oh, it is such a pleasure to be here.
Well, I know that you're a busy man, and we just consider ourselves fortunate that you had some time in your schedule to stop by and be with us here on the Gardener's Corner program. And it's just made mention this is a pre-recorded edition. And Mr. Troxler, want to find out some information about you, but first, tell us what, in a sense, brings you into Roxborough and Person County today.
Well, you know, it's really good to be in rural North Carolina. The legislature's out of town, and we try to take time, especially during the growing season, to travel to the different areas of North Carolina and look at the crops and visit with people. And that's the pleasure of being in the office that I'm in, is being able to meet the people of North Carolina. And believe me, there are good people from one end of this state to the other.
I would certainly agree, and I think we're very fortunate to live in North Carolina. No disrespect to any of the other states, but I love calling North Carolina home.
Well, and I certainly do too. And you know, my family's been here a long, long time. In fact, we came to North Carolina in about 1755 and actually settled in Alamance County along the Great Alamance Creek. So I've got really deep roots in North Carolina, and I truly love this place.
Well, Mr. Troxler, where do you actually make your home at now?
My farm is in the little community of Brown Summit, which is the northern end of Guilford County, right on the Rockingham County line. And believe it or not, I commute from my farm to Raleigh, and it's 82 miles one way, but there's no place that I can live except that farm.
Now, do you have a pretty good sized farm operation?
Well, before I became commissioner, I was a large tobacco farmer and was actually farming about 35 acres of tobacco and soybeans and wheat. But when the buyout came, I decided that, you know, it was time for me to do something different. And I had just gotten elected as Commissioner of Agriculture, so I slimmed down the farming operation and devote all of my time to being Commissioner of Agriculture now, and it's a joy to be able to hold this position.
Well, you know, I think it's a very prestigious position, and I think you represent it well, and you've done so since taking office in 2005. You're accompanied today by your Chief of Staff, Zane Hedgecock, and also Mr. Frank Timberlake. But this morning I understand that you kind of went to visit some of the Timberlakes in the Timberlake area of Person County.
You know, I did. I met Billy Timberlake at the Got to Be NC Festival in Raleigh, which, you know, we have a big antique tractor show and antique show with that event. So we got to talking, and he was telling me about building his country store and all his collections. So while we were up here, I went by to visit with him and saw his collection of memorabilia from the past. And so, you know, that's part of my personal interest, so it was good to be able to do that.
Well, you know, Billy's a nice guy. I've known him a long time. He, you know, retired here in Roxborough with the DOT department, and he's known far and wide, and he's quite the collector. And glad you was able to come out this morning. And I understand you went over and paid a visit with his mother.
I did. We went over and met Betty Timberlake, who I think she's 88 years old. And she actually is a Century Farm, and we have a program for people that have had farms in their name for over 100 years. And she is actually a member of that Century Farm community. So we went by and talked to her about, you know, what it takes to keep a farm 100 years in a family and continuously. And it's amazing when I hear these stories from across North Carolina. And you think about it, they came through the Depression. It was really tough times. A lot of people left the farms, but a lot of them hung in there, and we've got over 1,900 of these farms in North Carolina registered now.
Well, you know, Mr. Troxler, you mentioned the Depression times, and of course I was not, you know, born at that time, but we all think about tough times these days. But from what I gather, the Depression days was extremely tough and hard on families, and those that were able to maintain and keep what they owned during those times were very lucky and fortunate, I think.
And you know, I think the strength of the agricultural community and families is what brought people through that Depression in North Carolina. We did have at that time, we had a pretty good established tobacco crop in North Carolina and a market for it, and I'm sure that during that period of time that, you know, the tobacco helped sustain it. I've heard my granddaddy say that they voted the program out, I think in 1938, and he took his tobacco to the warehouse, and I think they offered him like a half a cent a pound for it, and he brought it back home and just actually spread it on the land. He thought it had more value as fertilizer than it did the half a cent a pound.
I've heard stories about that, and I think everyone has their own opinion about tobacco, and I think tobacco sometimes gets a bad rap. And what I mean by that, you know, it's a lot of places that do not allow smoking, and I'm not a smoker myself, but I think it's a personal choice. But with all that being said, if we did not have tobacco in North Carolina, it would be a lot of people not living the life that they are today, and it would be a lot of people without jobs.
Well, you know, the health discussion about tobacco is one thing, but if you look around this state and see the universities, the roads, the churches, everything that tobacco built over time, you know, it has been the major crop in North Carolina, and I think people would be amazed to know that it still is. It's much different, but it's still the major crop in North Carolina.
Well, you know, that was going to be a question that I had wanted to ask of you. It used to be years ago that a big tobacco farmer around this area was maybe 30 to 60, maybe 70 acres. But we have several farmers here in Person County now that farm 200, 300, maybe 400 acres of tobacco. And the way that the golden leaf is handled now, it's a lot different than the way that it was years ago.
You know, I think the thing that has happened more than anything else since the buyout has been the consolidation of farms. And yet, I know at one time I served on the North Carolina Phase 2 Commission, and we were sending out checks to about 100,000 people in North Carolina that were either farmers or owned tobacco allotment after the buyout. So now we're probably down to no more than around 2,000 farmers in North Carolina, but we actually are raising a very similar amount of tobacco that we were before the buyout occurred. So it's different, it's much larger. We depend on exports a tremendous amount now to market this tobacco, but there are still a lot of farm families in the state that depend on it for their income.
Well, Mr. Troxler, a question for you. I know throughout the years the Department of Agriculture has came up with different slogans. I remember one thing they used to say, if you're going to complain about a farmer, don't do it with a fork in your mouth. And you all now have the Got to Be NC campaign going on, and I think it's a really good campaign. And also on PBS, you all sponsor a program called Flavor NC with Miss Lisa Prince.
We do. You know, I guess I am really, really proud of this Got to Be NC program. When I came into office, in my former ag life, I also was in the produce business. And at that time, I delivered the produce that I grew directly to grocery stores and to markets. And that kind of died out over time, and it went to warehousing, and most of the products were from somewhere else. So when I came in, I wanted to develop a program that would get North Carolina products back on the shelf, that the consumer could recognize that these products were grown locally by farmers that they knew. And that was what the backbone of the program has been for the past 10 years. And in fact, this past 10 years, it was recognized as the top marketing program in North America.
Wow.
So we are very, very proud of it. And it continues to grow every year.
Well, you know, we are a WRAL TV5 affiliate. We carry their weekday newscast here at the station, 5:30 on weekday mornings, and then at 6 p.m. on weekday evenings. And on Friday mornings, you know, Lisa Prince is there with them and doing recipes, and they're really big on using, you know, products raised in North Carolina. And I really feel like that people, when they support products that is grown in their local towns, counties, and state, they are helping support not only themselves but their neighbors as well. And I think that is what we all need to do. And I know sometimes when people are shopping, it comes down to price, but whenever you can, you need to shop local, I feel, anyway.
Well, you know, I think that's absolutely true. The money that is spent on local products stays in local communities. And farmers themselves are consumers like everybody else, and when they have the ability to buy clothes, to buy a pickup truck, buy a tractor, most of the time that money's going to be spent right there in that local community, and you're helping local communities' economies thrive when you use that local dollar.
For those of you that are maybe just tuning into the Gardener's Corner program, we've got a special guest today, and glad to have Mr. Steve Troxler, the Commissioner of Agriculture of North Carolina, in the studios with us today. Mr. Troxler, before you decided to run for the office of Commissioner of Agriculture, and you took office in 2005, were you involved in any politics or anything before then?
Not politics per se. I had been elected as a nonpartisan Guilford County soil supervisor, district supervisor, in the past, but never had stepped out into a partisan elected office. But I had been involved in a lot of leadership positions in commodity groups. I think that probably was the best training that I could have. I'd been involved in the Farm Credit System as a director, been involved with the Tobacco Growers Association, had done a lot of work in Washington, D.C. on tobacco policy. So if you came up through the tobacco war, so to speak, then you had a pretty good training for what the political world was about, and that was my background and my training.
Well, now, was it your idea to run for Commissioner of Agriculture, or did someone say, "Hey, Steve, you'd make a great Commissioner of Ag"?
Well, I had been encouraged to run, and when Jim Graham retired, of course, the field was wide open. And I actually hadn't made my mind up, and I went to the Farm Bureau convention in Greensboro, and they had 8 candidates there speaking at that time. And I came back and I thought about it some more, and I told my wife that night, I said, you know, I'm going to run. And I went back to Greensboro the next day and spoke to the group and started running. I never had done anything like this, but I stepped out on the front porch at my house and held a press conference and had a lot of ag supporters from across the state there. So we built that campaign, and it was all grassroots basically, and still is. The campaigns I run are grassroots, but that election I actually lost. I lost by 1%, and then of course there were, you know, all the strange things that went on with the commissioner that had won, and the hardest decision I ever made was to go back and run that second time.
I bet.
When you put everything that you've got into a statewide election and you're not successful, it stings. It stings pretty bad. But my wife and I made the decision that I would try it one more time, and ended up winning that election.
Well, glad that you were persistent and continued on and ran for re-election. Well, not re-election, but ran to be elected for the office. You made mention of your wife. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, my wife and I were actually sweethearts in high school. I started dating her in high school, and we were married at the end of our sophomore year in college. She went to Carolina, I went to State, and we actually lived in Cary between the two, and she got her degree at Carolina, I got mine at State. We have 2 sons. Both of them were raised on the farm, and now I have 5 grandkids. But it's kind of strange, and people laugh when I say this, but we raised an attorney and a minister in the same household. But the good news is the attorney is as good a man as the minister is, and so I've got the best of both worlds. And I tell people, you know, in being in the world of politics, what I do is ask the minister to pray every morning that I don't need the attorney by dark, and it works out very well.
Well, that's a good analogy. It sure is. You know, and it seems with ministers and both attorneys, you know, a lot of times they're the subject of a lot of jokes that's passed around. But well, now as far as the family farm goes, I know you really enjoy having your grandchildren to come out to the farm from time to time.
We really do, and with 5 of them, we have a house full when they come out. And in fact, they were just there Saturday and Sunday and Monday during the July 4th weekend. So I have an 8-month-old grandson, so it's always a joy to see how much he's grown and the new things that he can do in a couple of weeks' time. So it's a real joy to have a farm to raise these grandkids on.
I'm sure it is. We're going to get a word on for one of our sponsors. We'll take a trip down to Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip, and we'll be back after this, and we'll continue on with our interview with the Commissioner of Agriculture of North Carolina, Mr. Steve Troxler.
Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip, is made in Roxborough. Whether you're having a family gathering or would just like a snack for yourself, be sure to keep plenty of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip on hand. Goodness grows in North Carolina. Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese, is available at T.G. Brooks Company, Hurdle Mills Market and Butcher Shop, North Main IGA, Twins Meat Market, Just Save, and Food Line stores. Also, if you're in Uptown Roxborough and get the hankering for some Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese, you can enjoy it at Cole's Pharmacy and Triss's Espresso. That's Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip. Try the jalapeno added for extra flavor. Goodness grows in North Carolina, and Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip, is located in Roxborough.
All righty, here we are back on the Gardener's Corner program. My name is Rob Hall. Our special guest today is Mr. Steve Troxler, the Commissioner of Agriculture of North Carolina. Again, Commissioner, appreciate you being on the show with us today. If you would, I would like to find out what's kind of involved in an average day of work with you on the job as Commissioner of Agriculture.
Well, I don't know if there is an average day. With all the things that we do, there's normally a crisis somewhere. And the job, it's based in Raleigh, but there's not a lot of agriculture in downtown Raleigh. So we also do a lot of traveling across North Carolina, but we've got a lot of regulatory things that we have to carry out in the department. I think there's about 90 laws that start out, the Commissioner of Agriculture shall, and that gives me a job to do. And it could be the regulation of gas pumps that we do. It could be food safety. We are responsible for the safety of all manufactured food in North Carolina, inspecting fertilizer, seed. The vet division is a huge division that is responsible for animal health in North Carolina. We have labs that we operate not only in Raleigh, but all across the state. We regulate pesticides in North Carolina. And the list goes on, and sometimes I could talk for 2 solid hours about the things that we do in the department and never get all of it covered. But the thing that I'm proudest of, most people don't realize that we are doing the job we're doing, and we do it every day and touch every citizen of this state all day, every day. And if they don't know it, then that's good government.
Well, you and I were talking a little bit before the show, and I was really quite surprised about the number of people that is actively employed in some shape, form, or fashion that is connected with agriculture. And I would venture to say that agriculture is by far the largest employer of North Carolina. Would that be correct?
That would be correct. In fact, we employ about 683,000 people in agriculture and agribusiness, either directly or indirectly, and that's about 17% of the population that's employed. And if I were to go to Charlotte or Raleigh and ask probably the average citizen, now what's the largest industry in North Carolina? They probably would say maybe the military, that's number 2, or they might say banking, or they might say tourism, but we are by far the largest industry, and the latest figures show that we're an $84 billion industry in North Carolina. And the good news is between 2013 and 14, we grew by $8 billion in that 1 year. So agriculture is not dead. It is live and well and thriving in North Carolina. We want to keep it that way.
Oh, I certainly hope that we can, because whether people want to believe it or not, their everyday lives is affected by agriculture in North Carolina, residents of North Carolina. You mentioned a while ago about with the tobacco industry that the exporting of tobacco is where a big majority of tobacco, is sent to overseas. As far as other foods that are raised, corn, grains, and things like that, is a lot of those exported overseas?
We export about every commodity that we grow in North Carolina, and we do have an international trade section in the department that looks after that. You think of the pork and poultry that we raise in North Carolina, we rank number 2 in hog production in the country, also rank number 2 in all poultry. A lot of that poultry is now going overseas to especially to the Pacific Rim, to Mexico, South America. So we are exporting a huge amount of product. In fact, we've now grown to where we are exporting about $5 billion of agricultural products out of North Carolina, and in the mix is forestry products.
Really, a lot of forestry products. Really,
do.
I know it's a lot of tree farms around, and when you talk about agriculture, it can be many different avenues, whether it's a grain farmer, tobacco farmer, maybe a livestock, a dairyman. It just kind of goes on and on. Now, up in the area of Guilford County, where you're from, Do you all have a lot of poultry farmers up that way?
You know, we actually don't. I think there are two poultry farms in the northern end of Guilford County. Guilford County never has been a huge county as far as poultry production or hog production is concerned. It's been primarily tobacco and row crops. And of course now a lot of people are raising produce. We're still raising produce on my home farm now, and my brother does the majority of it. He has a produce stand there in Brown Summit. He sells at the farmers market out at Colfax. But he also is, along with the Got to Be NC program, is directly delivering product to grocery chains in North Carolina. So he's taking advantage of the Got to Be NC program like many people are, and it's good.
Well, now, I've heard the expression farm to fork, and it's a lot of local restaurants that, you know, do business with local produce farmers. And, you know, I think it's really neat when you have that relationship between the restaurant and the farmer, and the two can work together. And when they find out what each other is good about raising and growing, you know, that relationship gets bigger, and it makes each one of them stronger. Wouldn't you feel so?
It does, you know, and it's not only the produce industry. One of the biggest growth programs that we have in the department is called the Meat Handler Program. And it's through our Meat and Poultry Inspection Division, and farmers sign up for the program, and then they are trained on the proper handling of meat products, and they take it and have it properly harvested or slaughtered. And then they're able to label it under their own farm label and sell it directly to the public. And a lot of the restaurants and eating facilities now are using local pork, beef, poultry, and it's been a huge growth industry, so we're very proud of that too.
I know here in Person County we've got a couple of different beef farmers that process their own beef and sell it, and then we've got one of them that does some poultry processing. And you know, it's really interesting, you know, when you think about everything that is impacted around agriculture. And like, to just give you this example, I worked with Pepsi Cola for about 20 years, and I actually ran a route. Well, a big majority of my route was to tobacco facilities in Granville County. And, you know, when you look at it that way, a lot of people sometimes think, you know, the tobacco industry does nothing for me. But you need to hold on. You never realize the people that may be working in those factories, and people that may be doing business with the business that you are affiliated with.
Well, you know, after I leave here, I'm headed back to Greensboro. I'm going to meet with the new management at Imperial Tobacco Group. And of course, that was Lorillard that has recently been bought. But you know, Lorillard had been a huge employer in Greensboro, probably one of the largest employers after, especially after the demise of the cotton mills. But you know, over 1,000 people employed at that one facility, and of course now Imperial has bought it, and I think they've laid off some people, but it's still tobacco manufacturing in Greensboro. Imperial has a facility in Reesville, the old American tobacco plant. So there's a lot of impact that agriculture has that people don't realize. And if you think back 100 years ago, most people in North Carolina were pretty much subsistence farmers. They raised a family on the farm, they fed them. And we had that crop called tobacco that provided a little income, and over time we began to educate our kids, and being able to have a stable food supply that is affordable is the reason that people can leave the farm and go do other things. If your everyday life is making sure that you've got something to eat and you've got to grow it, that's what you're tied to. But when we were able to develop agriculture into what it is today, one farmer feeding 155 people, then people could leave the farm. You know, there's the doctors, the lawyers, the ministers, whatever, you know, TV people, radio people. we now are confident that we can go somewhere and buy food that is affordable and it's going to be there every day. And that's the reason that you see such a growth in the United States and diversity of the economy. And if you look worldwide, there's a direct ratio between the number of people that are actually involved in agriculture and the success of the economy. And it's an inverse relationship in most countries. If most of the people are, on the farm, then they're pretty much still subsistence farmers, and the economies of that country is not booming like it is here.
Right. We need to get a word on for one of our sponsors. We'll take a trip and get a word on with South Boston Memorials. They're located over in South Boston, Virginia. We appreciate them being a sponsor on this special edition of the Gardener's Corner program. We'll be back with Mr. Steve Troxler right after this.
South Boston Memorials, located 1439 Seymour Drive in South Boston, Virginia. They offer granite markers, monuments, and mausoleums. For more information, visit the website SoboMemorials.com or call 434-572-3859. South Boston Memorials have been in business and family-owned since 1958. In-house laser etching is available at South Boston Memorials. They have over 300 granite memorials in stock. For all of your granite markers, monuments, and mausoleums, stop in and see them right there at South Boston Memorials, located 1439 Seymour Drive in South Boston, Virginia, or call them at 434-572-3859 and visit the website SoboMemorials.com. That's South Boston Memorials, located 1439 Seymour Drive in South Boston.
Here we are back on the Gardener's Corner program. My name is Rob Hall. If you're just tuning in, our special guest today is Mr. Steve Troxler, the Commissioner of Agriculture. Welcome again, sir. Appreciate you being here in Roxborough and Person County with us today. Mr. Troxler, a question for you. When we talk about the number of farms that have kind of declined over the years, whether it's, maybe these big shopping centers moving in or new highways coming in, is some of the undeveloped forestry or maybe other undeveloped land, is it being turned into farmlands?
Well, one of the major priorities that I have in the department is protecting farmland in North Carolina. And unfortunately, we've led the nation a couple times in the disappearance of farms. And I think sometime 2004 and 2005, we were leading the nation, and we were losing about 100,000 acres of farm and forest land a year. So we started a program to try to stem that loss of farmland, and thus far we've protected over 10,000 acres, which is a drop in the bucket, but at least we're trying. I look back at the figures of how much farm and forest land we had lost in North Carolina. If you go back to 1970 till the present time, we've lost about 6.6 million acres of farmland.
Wow.
And that is an astounding figure. But I guess the reason we still are so successful is because we've been able to do agricultural research, and the productivity is so much higher now than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And we've got to continue that uptick in productivity if we're going to feed a hungry world. And it's a little bit scary when they start talking about having to feed 9 or 10 billion people in the world and saying we may have to double the food supply by the year 2050. Wow. So when I speak, I want people to remember the importance of agriculture and feeding people. And I tell people, and it's been my experience, that hungry people are mean people. So if we don't meet this worldwide food demand by agricultural productivity, then the United Nations says we're going to see more terrorism, more political turnover, crime. So, that's kind of the moral obligation that we in agriculture have worldwide for the coming years. So we've got to meet that demand.
Well, when you speak of hungry people, here in Roxborough, we have the food pantry, and they receive shipments of food from the Food Bank of North Carolina. How does the Department of Agriculture work with the Food Bank of North Carolina?
Well, you know, this is another one of the things that we do that people don't really know we do. But most of the USDA food and Department of Defense food comes into two warehouses that we have in the department. One of them happened to be in Butner. The other is in Salisbury, North Carolina, and we have a fleet of 34 tractor trailers that actually delivers this food to the food banks, and we work with the food banks on a daily basis on this food. We also have a farm-to-school program that is through that division, and we're buying product directly from farmers and then taking it to the school cafeterias to help feed the kids, and they're getting fresh North Carolina produce into the school cafeterias, and it has all kinds of benefits.
Now, are you talking about the North Carolina Food Distribution Center in Butner?
That's us. That's the North Carolina Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, I know some of the people down there, and that used to be a stop that I delivered to, and I know that they ran all over the place. So it's only two locations, one in Butner and one in Salisbury.
Yep, that's where we operate at.
Well, I was not aware that it was only two of those locations. Now, when you get to talking about all of these farms and things, do you ever have a concern that we may be faced at some point in time about the younger generation coming on and the generation after that may not necessarily be interested in farming?
That is a huge concern. The average age of a farmer in North Carolina is about 58 years old, and I have surpassed that. So, you know, trying to get young people interested in agriculture again, come back to the farms, we're actively working with universities to try to get that done. I personally teach a course at NC State about every other year to get acquainted with people, with kids from rural areas, to encourage them to consider agriculture as a career. And there are those out there that are, you know, want to do it, but it is an economic thing. When you make a commitment to farm, it's not in today and out tomorrow. It's long term, and there are going to be bumps in the road, and it does take a special type of person to make that long term commitment. And when things don't go right, you know, bow your neck and go to the next level. But we've got to get young people back in agriculture.
Well, you know, Mr. Troxler, I guess in a sense, with technology and equipment cost these days, to start a farming operation would be extremely a pricey adventure to do so. But, you know, with maybe a lot of these young people that are being raised on a farm, you know, hopefully, you know, if they decide to venture away for a few years after being out of school, it would be nice if they would come back to the farm and continue the family tradition. And as far as programs that would maybe help a young person to start farming, is it any programs out there of such?
You know, there actually are. There are federal programs for the most part. One of them is the Young Farm and Rancher program that does have some capital available for young people to borrow to at a low interest rate to be able to get into it. And we do things in the department. One of the things we do is if people get into, say, the produce business, and even in a small way, most of the grocery chains and wholesale people are going to require GAP certification, good agricultural practices, and we do have grants to help people get GAP certified. We also have grants to help people get organic certified, which is a a trend that's out there that's been very profitable. And there are ways for young people to get into agriculture to start small and grow their way into it. My chief of staff, Zane Hedgecock, and I both started the hard way. When I got out of college, I did not have a farm. I did not have any equipment. I did not have tobacco allotment, and I built a fairly large farming operation from scratch. And it was not easy. And thank goodness my wife was a school teacher, and she could provide some insurance for us and some benefits and some steady income in the formative years of putting that farming operation together. But it can be done. It's, like I say, it just takes a very special person that's willing to put the grit into it to do it.
Well, now, Zane, your chief of staff, was he an actual farmer as well?
He actually was a full-time farmer, but he also, he grazed tobacco and he raised grains, but he also has some other talents. He actually is at one time worked part-time as a chef, had his contractor's license, built houses, and did all kinds of things. So we both are pretty much well-rounded in the things that we can do.
Well, I was going to say it sounds like that both of you all have been around the block a time or two and seen that and done that, and experience is what your office has to offer, and I think that is really good for North Carolina agriculture.
And it's not always the successes that teach you the lessons in life. Sometimes when you really get your butt kicked, that's when you learn a lot, and we both have been through those things, especially in farming.
Yeah, and you kind of say, been there, done that, and don't plan to
do that again.
We need to get a word on for T.G. Brooks Company. They've been a sponsor of ours here on the Gardens Corner program a long time, and they've been in business since 1936. And Commissioner Troxler, I don't know if you've ever been to T.G. Brooks Company before, but if you never have, you need to stop in and see Bill and Roy. They're nice guys, and they are a one-stop shopping center in a sense. But let's get a word on for T.G. Brooks Company.
The month of July, and two things are important to a lot of us here in Person County. Number one is getting those delicious vegetables and pickles put up for the winter, whether you grew them or bought them at one of the two farmers markets. T.G. Brooks Company has all your canning jars in half pints, quarts, half gallons, and they have pressure cookers, bath canners, strainers, funnels. In fact, all of your canning supplies they offer at T.G. Brooks. They offer the stone jars for pickling too. The second item is to keep everything green, and T.G. Brooks Company can handle all kinds of watering needs. First of all, they have sprinklers, water hose sprayers, and water hose parts. They have irrigating equipment. T.G. Brooks Company also has your piping for irrigating. They have gas-powered pumps. A reminder, T.G. Brooks Company has Bartlett Animal Feeds, and they have dog fences and dog food by the bag. Also, it's time to beautify your property while you're out of doors. They offer so many kinds of mulch in bulk form or bagged. You can get your mulch by the large scoop. They have delivery services available too. Bring your truck, trailer, and they'll load it up for you. When it comes to yard tools to do the work, they have all your hose and diggers and choppers and everything you need to beautify. And be sure to enjoy the day with your family by ending the day with a delicious hand-cut rib-eye steak, sold and cut to your width, and cook it up on the grill. And then don't forget the ice cream freezers for some homemade ice cream. They have them. T.G. Brooks Company has been serving the farmer, the homeowner, and landscaper in our area since 1936.
Here we are, back on the Gardens Corner program. Mr. Steve Troxler, the Commissioner of Agriculture, is here with us today. Commissioner, if you would, can we talk about agriculture in Person County?
We
And when I say
certainly can
Person
do that.
County, I'm talking Person County only. What kind of an impact are we looking at as far as agriculture in Person County, number-wise?
Well, I would say that Person County would be the typical Piedmont farming county, very diverse. Tobacco leads the way. There's about 4,800 acres of tobacco, and it produces over 12 million pounds of tobacco, so that's a big shot. But also corn, soybeans, wheat, and there's some poultry, and actually some hogs being raised in Person County. And as far as tobacco goes, Person County ranks number 12 in the state as far as the production
Number
of tobacco.
12.
Yep, so they are very important. And we have seen a lot of really good tobacco crops and corn crops as we have rode across the county today. So I'm very hopeful that farmers are going to have a good year this year.
Yeah, we've had some pretty decent rainfalls of recent, and as well as the farmers know, rain is needed all the time, but at certain points in raising a crop where you need rain a little bit more so. But from what I've seen, it's some really good looking tobacco, corn, and the soybeans are coming on, and we want to wish all of the farmers, within the sound of our voice, the best of luck.
Also, I thought it was also another interesting number. There are still 395 farms in Person County, so it is an agricultural county and one that we're very proud of.
395.
Yep.
Wow, I didn't have any idea. So I've been living here all my life, and you already know more about the place than I do. Mr. Troxler, we've got a few more minutes, but there's some things that I really wanted to touch on. Let's talk about, it'll be here before you know it, the North Carolina State Fair. A lot of people may not be aware of it, but that is the baby of the Department of Agriculture.
It's a big baby, too. When I first came into office, probably one of the most intimidating things about the position was the State Fair. It had been through the scandal with the right operators, and so we had to take it slow and easy in learning what was going on, but it's now one of my very favorite things in the whole wide world. And 3 of the last 6 years, we've had over 1 million people attend the State Fair. It's now ranked by some accounts in the top 5 in the nation, certainly in the top 10 in the nation. So we're very proud of it, and we're freshening it up all the time. This year we're building a new blacksmith shop and sales area. We built a new tobacco pavilion last year. Also going to have a sky ride this year that'll take you from one end of the fairgrounds to the other overhead, and we're very proud of that. And I'm putting in 66 acres of new parking for the state fairgrounds so that people can park. And we're going to provide trams to haul people to the fairgrounds, and you get your ticket when you get there. And when you want to go back, we're going to have trams running continuously. So this is going to be one of I think, the great additions. We've got a tunnel coming in the future under Trinity Road between Carter Finley Stadium and the fairgrounds. So there's a lot of improvements, a lot of things going on.
Is it safe to say that the NC State Fair is one of the big fundraisers to help out with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture?
It's actually a separate division, and we do not get an appropriation from the legislature for the state fair. It's a business. It funds itself. So when we do projects, building projects or whatever, it's dependent on how many people have bought tickets to the state fair. So this is one of the things that I enjoy about it. It is a business. So I hope people will come out and support us and enjoy. It's just a wonderful experience.
Well, with the state fair, it's big on agriculture, whether it's livestock, horse showing, and you also have all different kind of exhibits of produce and things like that. Always kind of different contests and things associated, even for the winemakers. For someone to find out more information about the North Carolina State Fair, how would be the best way to do so?
Well, all you got to do is go to the Department of Agriculture website, and we have a part of that is the State Fair. They have their own website. So if you'll go and look there, you'll see everything that's going on. And I tell people that the State Fair is the best entertainment value in North Carolina. We want you to come out, and believe me, we want you to spend some money. But if you do nothing but buy a price of admission ticket and come in there, I don't think you can see everything in one day.
Oh, so I would say not.
It's just an amazing display of North Carolina is what it is.
Well, now, one other event that takes place there on the State Fairgrounds in May, in which the State Fair will be coming up in October, but every May you all have a big event called the Got to Be NC Festival. Tell us what all is involved in that.
People say that it's almost like a mini state fair, but We showcase antique farm equipment at the show. We have a food expo where people can go in and taste the different products that we have in North Carolina. Of course, there's the Mason's Pig Jig, that the barbecue cook-off. So we've got something for everybody. We have a lot of agricultural kiddie exhibits, things for kids to do. It's a wonderful event, and guess what? It's free.
Well, you know what? You can't beat that price. Well, Mr. Troxler, we're just about out of time, but before we wrap up this special edition of the Gardeners Corner program, you're in your third term now, been in office since 2005. Do you plan to run for re-election?
I am running for re-election in November, and hopefully the citizens of the state will see fit to return me for my fourth term. And we've got a lot of unfinished business. One of them, the biggest one, is we're going to build a $94 million lab facility to combine all of the labs in the department, which are vet, pesticide, food, our gas and oil division, and our standards division. All of that's going to be combined for efficiency. And it was on the bond issuance that people passed. So that's a 4-year project within itself. So I want to run again to see that, especially to see that project through and make sure that that's done properly.
Well, we appreciate the job that you have pretty much dedicated your life to, and we want to wish you continued success, and want to let you know you're welcome here anytime. I know you're a busy man, but if you can ever find the time, we welcome you and Zane and Frank back at any given time. So that's going to wrap it up for the Gardeners Corner program today. Special thanks to our sponsors, South Boston Memorials, Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride, Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip, and T.G. Brooks Company. And an extra special thanks to the Commissioner of Agriculture, Mr. Steve Troxler. Thank you, sir. I've enjoyed my time with you. Thank you.
Certainly, I have too.
Want to wish you and yours a happy and safe weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next week for the Gardeners Corner program, and we will have Mr. Paul Westfall of the Cooperative Extension Service on the show with us next week. Have a great day.